Welcome to episode 113 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Breitman, coming to you Monday, July 17th. Had a special weekend edition of the podcast to react to the news to three-star defensive back Kevin Levy surprisingly committing to Rutgers football. Big win on the recruiting trail, picking over Florida State and Louisville. So check that last episode out. Today, wanted to focus on Rutgers basketball, specifically the roster for next season and portal activity. There's been some stuff reported. There's been some things that I've previously discussed and thought it was time for an update. So in terms of the new information, and it's not exactly new. It was initially reported by 24/7 Hoops, great Twitter account, that he had interest in Rutgers. He was talking to Rutgers. I'm talking about Jeremiah Williams, former Temple guard, was at Iowa State this past year, was injured, did not play. So the staff, I guess, reached out to him, or they've been speaking a few weeks ago. And yesterday, 24/7 Hoops, and then also John Rothstein followed that he's scheduled to visit next week. July 24th was the date reported. So interesting situation. He played 2 years at Temple, averaged close to 10 points. One thing I really like about his numbers, looking advanced statistics, he was a top 50 assist rate 2 years ago. Nationally, 58th, 31% assist rate. He's a bigger guard, 6'5", from Chicago. Played 2 years at Temple, and then was at Iowa State this past year. So he had an Achilles injury, which is a pretty severe injury. I've read the timelines anywhere from and not specific to Jeremiah, but just in general, 12 to 18 months. So he's been in reports that are out there. He said he's not a full go yet. The other issue with Jeremiah Williams, not issue in terms of, not to consider him, but in terms of for next season, he would be a two-time transfer as an undergrad. So the NCAA rule gives the one-time transfer rule. You can transfer immediately to be eligible for the next season. Once you transfer a second time as an undergrad, there is the 1-year sit-out rule that was customary previously when you transferred once. So you would need a waiver to essentially get around that. Now, he transferred to Iowa State. He did not play. I'm not privy to the circumstances. I don't think anyone is, in terms of what that kind of situation is and perhaps what could warrant a waiver. So it's an interesting situation in that regard. Full disclosure, Iowa State athletics is undergoing a little bit of a scandal with gambling. There's no reason to believe that he's involved in that or that basketball. Nothing's come out that said that. But I do think potentially that's another layer of just due diligence that Rutgers and the staff will have to administer. So that I make that point in regards to timing. If he comes on campus next week, I mean, the clock really is ticking. Rutgers goes overseas on August 8th to Senegal. So the NCAA waiver process, you can take guys into the program, they can sign, but you don't necessarily have to have the waiver done yet. But there's been reporting out there this offseason that the two-time transfer waiver has not been easy to get around or to get approved. So obviously every situation is different. So it'll be interesting to see. But hey, he hasn't even visited yet. So I do think it makes sense on paper to target a player like this. Obviously, did play significant minutes for Temple 2 years ago. Went to Iowa State. He was actually committed to Illinois, I believe it was early June of this offseason. And then later that month, decommitted. So looking to find out some details in that regard as well. But obviously, a lot of interest from the high major level. And just in looking at the roster for Rutgers, it makes sense that they're continuing to go after guards. Now, Austin Williams, the transfer from he's currently finishing classes at Florida International, from what I understand. Started at Hartford 2 years prior to that. Missed all of last season as well due to an injury. things are still looking very good with him. The thing with transfers is it's just more complicated in terms of paperwork, in terms of situations, in terms of finishing classes where they are, in terms of eligibility, and in terms of all types of things. So even though it's been a few weeks now since he visited, everything I'm hearing is really positive about him ultimately ending up at Rutgers. So that's good news. He's a bigger guard as well. But I think it's just a matter of time in terms of him making a decision and where he ends up. But he's a New Jersey native. I think all signs are looking very positive that he ends up in Piscataway. And then looking at the two Williamses together, uh, you know both are coming off injuries. I think that Austin Williams, he's going to need a waiver as well, although he is a grad transfer. So on paper, you would think that it's more of a formality. Of course, we are talking about the NCAA here. He would need a waiver for his seventh year, but he does have a year of eligibility remaining. So you would think that he will be eligible. Where Jeremiah, it seems like there'd be a bigger hurdle to get past in terms of that two-time transfer rule. On paper, I'd say they're a little bit similar in terms of just being bigger guards, being able to defend multiple positions. I really like Austin's game in terms of him being an attacking guard. Neither are particularly great in threes. Austin's a little bit more efficient. He definitely, I would say, if you could only take one, you take Austin Williams, just based on his experience. He was a star for Hartford. He has, big game experience. He did really well against Baylor in the NCAA tournament. They played some other high majors at Hartford, including Villanova. So I think that, based on his skill set, he also has a high assist rate. He's a good rebounding guard. I think culturally, it's his last shot. He's going to want to win. And to add an experienced guard like him with Noah Fernandez and obviously Derek Simpson, Jermichael Davis in the backcourt, and also gives them a skill set they don't have right now in the backcourt. He would be the biggest guard by far. He'd be the most experienced guard by far. He's a local kid. He'd bring experience, maturity. I think it's a really good fit. Jeremiah, brings you more experience, brings you a guy that performed well at Temple, and that is a bigger guard as well. So it'll be interesting. Rutgers has right now 3 open scholarships. Austin would potentially fill one. Jeremiah could potentially fill another. The reason I do think it makes sense to still take 2 guards is the composition of the roster, right? So you have Cliff. You get Cliff 35, 30 plus minutes a game. Can rely on him in that. I think obviously if Antoine Woolfolk, if Emmanuel Agbole, the JUCO transfer, they can get some minutes potentially, but you're pretty well stocked in that regard at the 5. At the 4, I think you could have Wolf play at the 4 some as well. Mag obviously coming off an injury. All reports are that his recovery is going well. I think it's premature to think that he's going to be to know when he's going to officially be ready and how long it's going to take him to kind of get back to being himself and playing at the level he did. But all positive things in terms of his injury recovery process from the torn ACL. So you have Mag there, you have Wolf. And then at the 3, you have Gavin Griffiths, obviously the highest signed recruit in modern program history, or at least the last 15 years, I should say. Andre Hyatt, back, very versatile. He could play some of the 4. He could play some of the 3. And then you have Antonio Troll, who's a bit of a wild card. So, but that's 7 players that can give you front court and perimeter minutes. Where the backcourt right now, you're just at Noah, Derek, and Jermichael. So why not add 2 veteran guards? Yes, both potentially, if it is Jeremiah along with Austin, they're both coming off of injuries. Noah missed the end of last season with an injury. You have Matt coming off an injury. That's a lot of mix and match in terms of guys coming off injuries, but that's why it kind of makes sense to just stock the roster. And I think it also speaks to it's July 17th. You have to compromise in terms of what's available. Look at what the upside is and assume the risk on the downside. It sounds like Austin and Jeremiah are both high character guys, would be good cultural program fits. So it makes sense, right? It makes sense. I've also talked about the benefits of potentially adding a transfer that has multiple years left that can be part of the 24-25 team. When you are very young, you have hopefully that heralded 24 class coming in. It makes sense to have a couple extra veterans, that if you can bring in a transfer now who can acclimate to the program this year and be really integrated for next year, it's a big plus. So maybe that is part of the plan, right? Maybe they figure Jeremiah, whether he's eligible or not this year, whether he's healthy or not, he's a guy they think they can invest in that can help the program the following year. So I think, in that regard, I like that idea also. I don't think they're going to fill the 13th spot, but it sounds like right now, I mean, these are, things have been very tight knit. I don't think they've had, many other visitors outside of these names we're hearing. We know that Noah Fernandez, came and went really quickly. Happened last year with Cam Spencer. And when these guys, Jacob Young, even, I mean, when they're on campus, they visit, boom. So maybe that's why some people are worried about Austin Williams. But I think, again, as a grad transfer coming off an injury who just transferred last year, it's just more complicated. And I think that more than anything is probably why it's taking longer, because by all accounts, I think that there's interest on both sides, and I think ultimately it will work out. Just in terms of where the backcourt, in terms of right now, Noah and Derek, I think are the clear starters. Would Austin potentially start? I think the other thing with Austin Williams is potentially, you could slide him over to the three as well, if you want to go with a 3-guard set. So I think it adds versatility. Jeremiah, potentially you could do the same. But I think it takes some pressure off everybody to if you have 5 guards, JaMychal Davis, potentially, if say both Williams guys are players are healthy, it gives Davis some time to ramp up as well. And hey, maybe he does ultimately earn minutes, but we know that, Rutgers and Pikel don't like to thrust freshmen in unnecessarily. So adding 2 veterans to the backcourt and also just aiding his development, is certainly a positive. But I think the way the front court is stocked right now, Hyatt's going to get minutes. Griffiths is going to get minutes. Mag, when he returns, is going to get minutes. Cliff is going to get minutes, big minutes. Wolf is going to get some type of minutes. What Chol and Egbole give you next year, we don't know. We hope they give something. But I think you have 5 guys there. And obviously, nothing set in stone. And I've talked about the competition level, and Pikel really, other than Cliff, no one's really, I think, penciled in for a certain amount of time. Everyone else is going to have to kind of compete and battle it out. So I think that group, that 3, 4, and 5 group is pretty well stocked. And that's where you look to add to the backcourt. So again, Noah, I think, is a great addition. I'm working on a video with him in terms of he's such a crafty, instinctual guard. He's very different than I think Rutgers has had. He's a very different basketball player just in general, in terms of how he's able to kind of make things out of dead plays out of nothing. He's very creative. He's very poised. Size. I know I've seen some concerns about it. I mean, listen, smaller players can succeed in the Big Ten. We've seen smaller guards, Mike Smith from Columbia at Michigan. Remember Sam Sessoms at Penn State. He's a smaller guy. He was really good there. So durability, is a question with everybody. Obviously, he's coming off that ankle injury from last year. It sounds like, he's ready to go. And I think he's just going to bring an element to the offense that is going to be unique and positive. Again, Austin Williams, high assist rate. Derek Simpson, he's going to be able to learn from these veterans. I think his role again is going to continue to grow. He's obviously was the only natural penetrator on the roster last year. I think having if Austin Williams does sign, and then with Fernandez, then you have 3 natural penetrators on the perimeter. That's going to give Rutgers, a different element in their offense than they had last year. Gavin Griffiths is your knockdown shooter. He's going to create spacing for him. Hyatt, would benefit from some spacing. And again, he has the versatility to be able to play down on the 4, especially if Mag, if Mag isn't back to what the level that he was at. He's kind of your insurance plan there. And then again, Wolf's development is key as well. And then, like I said, Chol, and I would love to see Chol craft out a role. But you can't rely on him in terms of, I think, the rotation yet. But only the coaching staff knows his development, and I'm excited to see him in action. So just note also that nationally, John Rothstein, I think everyone knows who John Rothstein is of CBS. He's the one that crafted C. Pikel Pounding Nails. He put out his Big Ten power rankings today and listed Rutgers 7th. So, that's not me waving the pom-poms. That's a national basketball writer putting Rutgers smack dab in the middle of the Big Ten power rankings on July 17th, before they add to the from the portal, right now it's a roster of 10. So reasons to be positive, reasons to be obviously, cautiously optimistic. Injuries is probably going to be something we're going to have to talk about. Injury prevention is going to be a whole subject if all of these players end up on the roster. But again, I think it speaks to the timing. But I think that Rutgers is doing the best they can in terms of the options that are available. And I think talking to both Williamses makes sense. And I'm intrigued to see what happens. So thank you for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful.